It just started. Padre Pio's 3 days of darkness are here, and it's worse than we feared. There's a strange stillness in the air, an invisible tension wrapping around the world like a storm no one can see, but everyone can feel. It's in the chaos of our headlines, the confusion in our hearts, the weight pressing down on our souls. And if you've been sensing it too, you're not crazy. You're not alone. You're being called to wake up, because what Padre Pio once saw in visions, what he once warned would come, is no longer just prophecy. It's not myth. It's not distant. It's beginning right now. This isn't just about darkness falling over the earth. It's about a spiritual reckoning that has already started unfolding before our very eyes. Padre Pio didn't speak these words to scare us. He spoke them to prepare us, to remind us that when man forgets God, the heavens do not remain silent. Judgment doesn't always scream, it sometimes whispers, and those whispers are now turning into a roar. So what are these 3 days of darkness? Who was Padre Pio, and why did he plead with the world to listen? Buckle up. What you're about to read could change the way you see everything. This is not just a message, this is a warning. And more than that, this is a wake-up call from heaven. Number 1. Who was Padre Pio? In a world that often questions the supernatural and seeks proof for everything, the life of Padre Pio shines like a beacon that defies human understanding, a living sign from God in modern times. Born in 1887 in the humble village of Pietrasina, southern Italy, who would later be known as Padre Pio, was never quite like the others. While other children laughed and ran through the dirt roads, young Francesco was found in deep prayer, often speaking of visions of Jesus and angels. His spiritual sensitivity was not a fantasy of youth. It was the early stirring of a calling that would shake the world. Despite his family's financial struggles, they sacrificed so he could join the Capuchin Franciscan order at the age of 15. It was then that he took the name Pio, honoring Pope Pius, not knowing that his journey would soon carry a cross, both literal and divine. As he matured in faith, Padre Pio faced tremendous physical suffering. Fevers, unknown illnesses, and chronic weakness plagued him. Yet none of these could break his devotion. In fact, they became the very furnace in which his spirit was refined. He was ordained in 1910, and only a few years later was sent to a small town called San Giovanni Rotondo, where his life would become a living sermon. What began there was not just a priestly ministry, but an unfolding of miracles that continue to stir hearts today. Confessions with Padre Pio became transformative experience. People reported that he knew their sins before they could even speak. He touched the untouchable with grace, healed the sick, and above all, called souls back to God with the urgency of someone who had glimpsed eternity. These weren't just stories. They were testimonies that still echo in the hearts of those who came to him broken and left restored. Then came the moment that confirmed to many what they had already suspected, that Padre Pio was carrying a divine burden. On a quiet morning in September 1918, while in prayer before the crucifix, he received the stigmata, wounds that mirrored those of Christ during his crucifixion. Blood poured from his hands, feet, and side, but never became infected. For 50 years, he bore these marks with deep humility and pain, never once asking for pity, only for prayer. He wore gloves, not for vanity, but to hide the wounds and keep attention focused on God, not on himself. Still, pilgrims gathered by the thousands. Even doctors, scientists and skeptics came to see, yet none could offer a rational explanation. Some accused him of fakery, but none could explain how a man could bleed daily, suffer endlessly, and still serve with such relentless compassion. His response? "I am only a poor friar who prays." His humility was his crown, and still the mysteries continued. Padre Pio possessed gifts that challenged the laws of nature, habilitation, reading of hearts, and prophetic visions. Soldiers at war claimed to have seen him beside them in battlefields, while he remained cloistered in his monastery. Others, far from his physical presence, would smell the scent of roses, believed to be the fragrance of his prayers reaching them. Many who doubted were converted simply by standing in his presence. The spiritual power radiating from him was not his own. It was a channel of God's mercy and love. Padre Pio once said, "Pray, hope, and don't worry. Worry is useless. God is merciful and will hear your prayer." These words are more than advice. They are a lifeline for anyone lost in the storm of modern life, where fear and uncertainty grip the soul. The teachings of Padre Pio were never meant to frighten, but to awaken. His life is a reminder that God still moves, still speaks, and still warns when the world turns too far from his light. Number 2, the 3 days of darkness prophecy. Let's take a moment to reflect on a prophecy that has not only stirred the hearts of believers, but has sent waves of spiritual urgency through generations. The profound, mysterious, and deeply unsettling revelation known as the 3 days of darkness. This is no myth. It's not religious poetry or allegorical folklore. This is a direct and chilling prophecy delivered by one of the most spiritually respected figures in modern Catholic history, Saint Padre Pio. And according to his own words, this wasn't something he imagined or speculated on. It was a revelation given to him from Jesus Christ himself. In a letter addressed to a chosen group of high-ranking archbishops under Vatican authority, Padre Pio detailed what he described as a moment of divine reckoning. He warned that a time would come when God, in response to the rampant sin and rebellion of mankind, would allow a period of 3 full days of supernatural darkness to fall upon the world. During these days, no sunlight would shine, no stars would be visible, and the moon would offer no comfort. The earth will be completely and terrifyingly swallowed in a thick, impenetrable darkness that will be both physical and spiritual. Now, pause for a moment and imagine that. Not just the darkness outside your window, but a kind of spiritual void in the air. A stillness so heavy it feels like the entire world is holding its breath. Padre Pio didn't just warn of darkness in the sky, he warned of darkness in the soul. He urged the faithful to stay inside, to seal their windows, to resist the temptation to open the door or peek outside, no matter what they might hear. Because during those days, he said, what walks outside is not meant for human eyes, and what whispers through the night is not meant for human ears. It will be a time when evil is unleashed with a freedom it hasn't had since the dawn of creation. But make no mistake, this isn't chaos for the sake of chaos. Padre Pio was clear. This darkness has a divine purpose. It is God's judgment, but it is also God's purification. He described it as a final warning to a world that has turned its back on truth. It is not meant to destroy blindly, but to wake up a generation that has fallen asleep in its comforts, distractions, and sins. It is the moment when heaven itself will declare enough. and when the weight of our collective choices will come crashing down like thunder. He said, "Only the faithful will be spared, not because they are better, but because they believed, because they prepared, because they repented." It's a terrifying image, isn't it? But wrapped in this judgment is also a spark of hope, a promise. Padre Pio emphasized that those who turn to prayer, who shield their homes with spiritual protection, and who place their trust not in man but in God, will be kept safe. The blessed candles, he said, would be the only source of light during those days, not because of their wax, but because of their blessing, not because of fire, but because of faith. And beyond the darkness, he spoke of renewal, of a world reborn, of a dawn that would break only after the soul of mankind had been purged of pride and rebellion. And this message didn't begin or end with Padre Pio. Throughout the centuries, other saints, visionaries, and mystics have spoken of similar times to come. The details may vary, but the heart of the message remains the same. Before God brings restoration, there must be reckoning. Before light is restored, the darkness must serve its purpose. And perhaps that's why this message has been preserved, not to scare us, but to prepare us. So why are we speaking of this now? Why is this prophecy, so ancient and sacred, echoing once again in modern hearts? Because more and more people are beginning to sense it, the unrest in creation, the unease in the human spirit. Nature feels off balance, morality feels twisted. People are more connected than ever, but also more spiritually lost. There's a strange noise in the world, an emotional static, and yet beneath it all, a deep emptiness. Could it be that the signs Padre Pio spoke of are no longer just warnings, but previews? That what was once whispered in letters and visions is now playing out in headlines and in the silent corners of our hearts? Maybe the prophecy is no longer just something to read about in old texts or hear in late-night conversations. Maybe it's already beginning. Maybe the time to choose light over darkness is not in the future, it's now. Number 3. What will happen during the darkness? What if the words of Padre Pio, one of the most mysterious and spiritually gifted saints of the modern era, weren't just ancient warnings, but living truth meant for our generation? What if his message about the 3 days of darkness wasn't some distant symbolic tale, but a prophetic vision? One that now burns brighter and louder as the world drifts further from God. Padre Pio didn't whisper these words. He thundered them through time, not to terrify, but to awaken, to remind us that heaven will not be silent forever. And when God declares enough, the entire earth will feel it. According to Padre Pio, the 3 days of darkness will not be subtle. They will not come gently. They will be a divine intervention, terrifying, sacred, and final. He spoke of a moment when the entire planet would feel as though the ground beneath it could no longer bear the weight of sin. The skies will crack open with fury. Thunder will roar with a voice that sounds less like weather and more like judgment. Winds will rise, not as breezes, but as violent messengers of chaos, tearing through cities and forests alike, and then suddenly all light will vanish. The world will be swallowed in a supernatural blackness, so thick, so total, that even the moon and stars will seem to disappear from existence. No electricity, no lamps, no glowing phone screens. Only blessed candles will burn, and not because of wax or wick, but because God wills it. These candles will not just provide light, they will become holy armor, casting a spiritual shield over the faithful and their homes. But that protection will only reach those who are prepared, those who have chosen prayer over panic and faith over fear. Outside, a different reality unfolds. The world will be overtaken by a storm unlike any the earth has ever seen. Padre Pio described fire falling from the sky, not metaphorical fire, but real, consuming, purifying flames. Imagine tornadoes made of fire, ripping through streets, swallowing buildings and scorching entire regions. Rivers will surge over their banks with violent force. Earthquakes will shake foundations as if the planet itself groans under divine pressure. Even the air will betray us. It will turn toxic, carrying death on an invisible breeze, creeping through the tiniest openings, seeking out those who disobey the warning to remain inside. And perhaps the most disturbing of all, Padre Pio warned that during these days you will hear voices. They will sound like your loved ones. You may hear your mother, your child, your best friend. They will cry out from the darkness, calling your name, pleading for help. But he was clear, do not open the door. Do not respond. These are not the people you love. They are dark imitations, tricks sent by the enemy to lure you into destruction. And the moment you open the door, physically or spiritually, you invite in what cannot be undone. During these 3 days, the veil between the physical world and the spiritual realm will be torn wide open. The unseen will become visible. Demons, yes, real demons, will roam the earth freely, no longer restrained by spiritual boundaries. Padre Pio said their howls would fill the air, their fury unleashed on anyone caught outside the covering of prayer and obedience. The war between good and evil will no longer be hidden in hearts or headlines. It will be right before our eyes. But perhaps the most haunting part is not the fire, or the storms, or the demonic presence. It's the silence from heaven. For 3 days, God will withdraw his voice. There will be no answers, no signs, no divine whispers, only the sound of our choices echoing back at us. And yet, within that silence, there is love. Yes, love. Because what loving parent allows their child to run toward destruction without consequence? This will be God's justice, but it will also be his mercy, a final attempt to shake the soul before it's too late. Still, there is hope. Beautiful, brilliant hope. Because Padre Pio didn't just speak of judgment, he spoke of protection, redemption, victory. He said those who prepare, those who choose repentance, those who anoint their homes with prayer and their hearts with faith, they will be spared. Their candles will glow not just with fire, but with grace. Their homes will become sanctuaries, and when the darkness lifts, those souls will emerge stronger, purified, and reborn into a world that has been deeply humbled. So the question now is not if this will happen. The real question is, are you ready? If you've made it this far, you already sense that something bigger is unfolding. Something spiritual, urgent, and deeply real. Comment below with "light in the darkness" to show you're standing strong in faith during these prophetic times. Don't click away just yet. There's more in this video that will open your eyes and prepare your soul. Stay with us until the end to uncover the powerful truths you need to navigate what's coming. Number 4. How to prepare for survival. Padre Pio, a man deeply attuned to the divine and intimately familiar with suffering, did not speak of the 3 days of darkness merely to stir fear, but to prepare souls, both practically and spiritually, for what he called a great reckoning. His message was not one of panic, but of purpose. He gave us powerful prayers, firm guidance, and sacred direction, rooted in obedience and unwavering faith. He made it clear, survival during those terrifying days would hinge not just on what we gather with our hands, but what we carry in our hearts. His advice was unmistakable. When the darkness descends, stay within your home. No matter the sounds outside, no matter the cries or temptations, resist the urge to open the door or glance through the window. As Padre Pio warned, whatever is outside is not of man. It is God's judgment, and those who defy this boundary may suffer not only physically but spiritually. The window, once a symbol of light and openness, becomes a portal of destruction during this time. Cover it, seal it, and close your eyes to the chaos beyond. It is not cowardice, it is faith in action. He urged us to prepare with blessed candles, holy flames lit only through the sanctification of a Catholic priest. These candles, he revealed, are not ordinary objects. They are divine instruments. Their light, fueled by God's mercy, will be the only thing that cuts through the thick, supernatural darkness. For 3 days and 3 nights, while the world outside descends into confusion and wrath, these candles will offer not just visibility, but spiritual protection. Their flame is a sign from God, a testimony that even in wrath, His mercy remains for those who believe. Alongside these holy flames, stock food and water, not just for the body, but for the soul's endurance. It is a time of isolation, yes, but not abandonment. Keep your Bible close, not as a relic, but as your lifeline. Open its pages daily. Let its truths speak louder than the screams of fear. Read, reflect, and pray the Rosary slowly, deliberately, as if your life depends on it. Because it does. These are not idle rituals. They are spiritual weapons, crafted by heaven to shield us when all earthly powers fall silent. He also insisted on remaining in a state of grace. That means seeking confession regularly now, while there is still time. Go to Mass while you can. Receive the Eucharist while the doors of mercy are open. For when the time comes, it will come suddenly, and the chance to repent will vanish like a shadow in the storm. This is not superstition. This is spiritual foresight. Padre Pio's advice was not theoretical. It was born from mystical visions and deep communion with God. He was not warning us to scare us, he was pleading with us to prepare. And when fear grips your soul, and make no mistake, fear will come, he said we must kneel before the crucifix, not just physically, but in surrender. Lift your arms, cry out to heaven. This act of surrender, Padre Pio said, is where true power lies. For in that posture of desperation is born the strength that only God can provide. As Psalm 91 verse 4 declares, He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. These teachings are not confined to some distant apocalyptic event. They speak to the everyday darkness that creeps into our lives, the emotional battles, the spiritual fatigue, the storms that hit our homes when no one else can see. The same preparation applies. Protect your home with prayer. Fill your life with the Word of God. Stay in a state of grace. Listen for signs from God, not just in grand miracles, but in the whisper of your conscience. In a world chasing noise and distractions, these moments of silent preparation become a form of rebellion, an act of hope. As the great Saint Augustine once said, "Hope has 2 beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are." Take courage, men of faith. The time to prepare is not tomorrow, it is now, in your homes, in your hearts, and in your habits. These are the days to rise, not in panic, but in powerful prayers, in stillness, and in trust that no darkness can extinguish the light of a soul anchored in God. Number 5. Signs the darkness is near. Before a storm rips through the sky, there are always signs nature trembles, the air grows heavy, and the animals grow restless. In the same way, before the terrifying 3 days of darkness descends upon the world, God in His mercy will give us warnings clear, physical, and undeniable. These won't be vague metaphors or distant prophecies locked away in poetic language. No, they will be real, tangible, impossible to ignore. And if we're paying attention, they will be our final chance to prepare. Padre Pio, the beloved mystic and holy man, spoke boldly of these signs not to frighten, but to prepare us. He didn't describe dreams or visions that needed interpretation. He described actual events that the world would witness. The first will be a chilling cold so sudden, so unnatural, it will send shivers down the spine, even in regions known for their heat. Imagine stepping outside and being met with an icy wind that bites through your clothes, that seems to carry a whisper. Something is coming. This cold isn't just weather, it's a warning straight from heaven. Then the winds will follow, not the gentle rustling of leaves, but fierce, howling winds that slam against your home like invisible fists. Doors will creak, windows will groan, and the air itself will seem to shake with dread. The sky, once familiar, will change its face. It will glow an unnatural red, not a sunset, not smoke, but something more disturbing. Thunder will roll like the roar of 1,000 voices, and lightning will split the sky again and again without rest. These won't be ordinary storms. These are divine tremors, alarms from God, echoing through the heavens. And then something even more haunting. The heavens will behave out of order. Padre Pio warned that the celestial bodies would begin to act in ways no scientist could explain. The sun may rise at the wrong time. The moon may bleed red. The stars themselves may disappear from the night sky. The harmony of the universe, set in motion by God's hand, will seem to fall apart, shaking even the most skeptical heart. These signs will not be isolated, they will happen across the earth, leaving no corner untouched. Even the animals, innocent and pure, will sense it. Long before we understand, they will react. Your dog may growl at unseen forces. Birds may vanish or fall silent. Cattle may gather and refuse to move or eat. These are not random behaviors, they are responses to the unseen, to a spiritual force moving swiftly and silently across the earth. Just as animals flee before earthquakes or tsunamis, they will respond to this too. And when all seems like it cannot get any worse, when fear, confusion and chaos are rising, a profound silence will fall. Not the peaceful kind, not the stillness that comes with rest. This will be a heavy, unnatural quiet that presses down on the soul like a weight. It will feel wrong, eerie. That silence will be the final warning the moment the veil begins to drop. Then, the darkness will descend. Not gradually like twilight, but instantly, like a curtain crashing down, cutting off everything in an instant. There will be no time to wonder or decide, no time to search for answers or make last-minute plans. Those who have heard the warnings must act immediately. Shut the doors, cover the windows, do not look outside. Light the blessed candles, because they will be the only light capable of pushing back the supernatural darkness. And above all else, start praying, not once, not casually, but constantly, fervently, without pause. A preparation begins now, not when the signs begin, but long before. If you're hearing these words, understand it's not random. It's not a coincidence. It's a calling. A quiet knock on your heart. It's God reaching out, warning, inviting you to return to Him before the hour arrives. Ask yourself honestly, am I spiritually ready? Would I recognize the signs if they began tomorrow? These aren't fear-driven questions, they're soul-awakening ones. Because our God is not a God of cruelty. He is a God of love and mercy. And in His love He warns before He acts. He shakes the earth, not to destroy us, but to wake us, because He wants you to be saved. He wants you to be ready. Number 6. God's promise and the aftermath. In the heart of fear and trembling, where men's hearts may faint at the mere thought of chaos and judgment, Padre Pio offers not just a warning, but a flame of unshakable hope and anchor for those willing to listen with faith. His message about the 3 days of darkness isn't a tale of doom meant to paralyze us. It's a divine wake-up call, meant to cleanse the earth, awaken souls, and reveal the unmistakable signs from God. Padre Pio was crystal clear: the darkness will separate the faithful from the faithless, not to condemn, but to offer renewal. He relayed a sacred promise he received from above: I will protect the just vow from the throne of heaven itself. And this wasn't metaphorical comfort. It was a literal, powerful assurance that God's hand would shelter those walking in His light, those who cling to prayer, obedience, and humility in a time when the world seems to have forgotten all three. Even if flames fall from the skies or unholy voices scream in the night, those faithful, those who stay in prayer, light their blessed candles and seal their homes with trust, will be under divine protection. Padre Pio placed enormous weight on being in a state of grace, not as a religious obligation, but as spiritual armor. When a man walks clean before God, confessing regularly, praying the rosary with intention, giving generously, and repenting sincerely, he becomes marked, not by fear, but by divine favor. In such a household, the enemy cannot enter. Evil may pass by, but it cannot linger. Even the animals in the homes of the faithful, Padre Pio said, will be under protection. What power and love must exist in a God who cares even for the pets of the righteous. This isn't about perfection, it's about sincerity, about striving, not arriving, about leaning not on our strength, but on God's mercy. As St. Augustine once said, God does not ask for the impossible, but for your heart. That's the secret. He asks for our heart, our honesty, and our yes. And what happens when the fire ceases and the screams fade into silence? The miracle begins. Padre Pio described a renewal so powerful it transcends imagination. The stars will return, not just to the sky, but to our lives. Light will break through, not only in the heavens, but in our spirits. After the 3 nights of divine judgment, mercy will rise like a new dawn. For those who stood in prayer, who whispered powerful prayers in the quiet of their homes while the world trembled, the reward will be beyond survival. It will be transformation. Their fear will turn into gratitude, their confusion into clarity, and their wounds into testimonies of grace. The ground will no longer shake, the air will no longer burn, peace will blanket the earth. But not just any peace. This will be a sacred peace, spiritual and enduring, rooted not in politics or human efforts, but in the very heart of God. It will be the kind of peace described in John 14, verse 27, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you." As this new era unfolds, angels, yes, real messengers of the Most High, will descend to guide those left standing, not to lecture or condemn, but to comfort and unite. The division that once scarred nations and families will melt under the warmth of this divine presence. Men who once wandered will remember why they were born: to love, to serve, to reflect God's glory in everything they do. The world will not be the same, and that's the point. The agony of those 3 days will not have been meaningless. It will be a line in the sand, a historical turning point between what was and what can now be. That is the core of Padre Pio's message, not an ending soaked in fire, but a new beginning soaked in mercy. This is advice from Padre Pio that transcends generations. Trust in God, remain in prayer, and be watchful. Keep your heart clean, your home ready, and your spirit humble. Because even when the world is dark, the faithful will shine. And in the end, those who endure with God will see a sunrise that brings not just light, but purpose. Let this be our time, men of faith, not to fear, but to prepare, not to run, but to kneel. Because even in judgment, God's mercy remains, and for the faithful, the best is yet to come. And there you have it. Padre Pio's prophetic warning isn't just a tale from the past, it's a call for this generation to wake up, to return to God, and to prepare not in fear, but in faith. The darkness may come, but so will the light, and for those who remain rooted in prayer and trust, a new dawn awaits. If this message spoke to your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos that dive deeper into spiritual truth, faith, and the mysteries unfolding in our time. Stay prayerful, stay awake, and remember, even in the darkest night, God is still with us. Until next time, keep walking the journey of wisdom.